Be very clear about this. I support the move to modernise Section 35 of the Citizenship Act so that people who dual nationals who go to fight for Daesh in Syria and Iraq would lose their Australian citizenship as a consequence of doing so.
Malcolm Turnbull speaking to me earlier on the show here to discuss that and the rest of a big week in federal politics as Insider's host Barrie Cassidy. Barrie, good morning. Let's start with that Turnbull interview. You saw that. What did you make of the argument he was trying to get across?
Well, he just wants to make it clear, I think, what his objection is to where the legislation appears to be going, and that is that if the minister is going to have some control over stripping away citizenship, it should be based on a conviction. And that's not only Malcolm Turnbull's view, it's a view of some of the ministers, it's a view of Brett Walker, the SC, who gave advice to the government on this, and that's where Tony Abbott has got into trouble, because Brett Walker now, who gave this advice, is now effectively accusing the Prime Minister of verballing him, and he's asked for an apology. So it's this issue that Tony Abbott is refusing to give ground on that's getting him into trouble.
In the meantime, Barrie, this is going to the party room on Tuesday, going to Parliament on Wednesday. What do you think will happen in that party room on Tuesday? Only two ministers were shown this proposal in the beginning. You've got a lot of people in that party room who've had no idea, haven't seen it. Do you think there is bad blood in that party room? Yeah, well, they skip the full ministry and then go straight to the party room. Perhaps the Prime Minister feels that the numbers are better in the party room. Look, it's not going smoothly at all. This week has reflected poorly on both political leaders, but on Tony Abbott, on this particular issue, the leaked document demonstrated the extent to which he really wants this issue to wedge the Labor Party. He wants it to become a political issue when it should be a bipartisan issue. He should be reaching across. And then for yesterday to say that to accuse the Labor Party of rolling out the red carpet for terrorists was a very provocative statement to make at a time when the Labor Party is yet to make a decision on whether or not they'll support him on this legislation.
Both parties, as you say, have had their problems this week. It's been a particularly bad week for Bill Shorten, even with some questions about his future in the job. Firstly, let's see what the Labor frontbencher Anthony Albanese has had to say about Bill Shorten this morning.
Look, Bill Shorten will certainly lead us to the next election. Bill Shorten's doing a great job of holding the government to account and on engaging in the issues that are of concern to people, the issue of defending our pensions, the issue of making sure that we advance education and health without the vicious cuts that the federal government want to impose. Bill Shorten has the confidence of the Labor Party as the leader. He was chosen to lead us to the next election. He certainly will, and I hope that we're successful at that election and that I get to serve in a Shorten Labor government.
That's fairly standard political language that you get around this kind of thing. But look, it comes at why is that question being asked? The week started with a bad poll where he had the worst, the lowest net approval rating that he's ever recorded. He then messed up the parliamentary tactics over the people smuggling issue. The killing season, of course, arrived on time and he got a dishonourable mention in that. And then, of course, you've got all of these AWU allegations. But just to put those allegations into some perspective, it's The Australian this morning. This is David Crowe on The Australian wrote this. The ferocity of the attack on Shorten's past is something to behold. The Sydney Morning Herald says leadership is becoming untenable. That conclusion is an extraordinary overreach. That's The Australian having a go at the Herald for being out in front on this issue. So where is it all headed? I think there are a couple of other things that have helped him out to an extent in the last day or two. One is that he did get an early hearing. Yep. That will help, that he can go to the Royal Commission and he doesn't have to keep fending off questions forever. And the other thing was the endorsement that he got from Tony Shepherd, who is a key business advisor to the government. And Tony Shepherd said the agreement that was the first one that was raised and was central to the allegations was the template for the industry, and that they got a great result. So I think the Fin Review this morning had headlines saying it's Bill Shorten's moderation that's getting him into trouble. That's right. It is to an extent because he was seeking that kind of an outcome. And it's kind of ironic, isn't it, that that's coming back to haunt him.
And also this Greens pension deal that the Greens struck with the government as well, $2.4 billion in savings measures. Yeah. Not a good week for the Labor government. That's
the one that I think has more bite than any of them, really, when you cut through, because here is an opportunity for the Labor Party to reach out and do something about fiscal repair. You know, it must be so frustrating to so many people when you see that the government puts up a reasonable proposition, unexceptional in nature, to save some money on pensions by putting in a harsher assets test and then giving full pensioners a $15 a week increase. The Greens sign up to it, and Labor turns it into a scare campaign. And the mirror image of that is what the government has done to Labor's policy on superannuation. The Labor Party puts up what is a modest and reasonable proposal, and the government resists that and turns it into a scare campaign. Is it any wonder people get frustrated with the process at the moment?
And in fact, that's the very tenor of your column in the Drum today. Do you feel depressed having to write these sort of pieces all the time?
This week just seemed to have it all.
Yeah.
Wherever you looked, you'd have to be depressed with the way that the political leaders and the political parties are dealing with these issues, whether it be, but how is it, though, that in a week when you get an issue where demonstrably the evidence is that the government did pay people smugglers to turn back the boats, and Bill Shorten has the week from hell, when that is the end result, then it's one wacky week.
Going back to the killing season, rating more than 1 million viewers, it's the most closely watched TV of the week. There was one theme, one word in fact, that filtered through that episode that charted the events leading up to Kevin Rudd being knifed by Julia Gillard. Thanks to our editor Hugh Parkinson, here it is.
We're on 52% in the polls.
Every bad poll for the Prime Minister means more leadership questions for you.
Julia Gillard's own polling numbers, party polling.
Ordered polling.
On the polling booths that day.
I was looking at the polling on my iPad or something. She kept talking about the polling.
Politicians always tell us they never regard the poll. Look at the polls. The only poll that counts is election day.
The only poll that counts is the next news poll.
That's right.
and that's the truth of it all. Look, the one knock-on effect from that, though, is surely when the coalition members, backbenchers and the rest of them are looking at the killing season, they would be less inclined, wouldn't they, to move against Tony Abbott when they see that when you take this kind of unprecedented, almost unprecedented action, you move against a Prime Minister in office, the impact is going to last for years.
Wooden spooner, Barry?
To set this up, I have to go to Boris Johnson, the Mayor of London and Tory MP. He was riding home from a function when he had an altercation with a cab driver, and this is what happened next.
Yeah, you're one of them, mate. Sure, one of them. What are you guys not in that order? Yeah, how you die?
Boris Johnson said of that it was just a simple return of serve. And as unedifying as it was, and even though I've named him, given him the wooden spoon, it will turn into a PR triumph, it will.
Oh, absolutely.
He can turn anything into a PR triumph.
He will.
The man could do no wrong. Barry, thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Barry.